Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, president and founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Standup. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today, I wanted to talk to you about some advice. So here's the scoop. Somebody recently sent me an article. It was a pretty good article, and it was titled 12 Pieces of Advice from Jeff Bezos. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is the same guy. He's the creator of Amazon, one of the richest guys on the planet, recently divorced, and he's recently been to space. I don't know that he's the guy that we want to associate or get advice from. But I honestly read through this article and I thought that there were a few key points in here that really made a lot of sense. So I thought I'd touch on some of these and that we take a couple of days to review them. And I think that I hope that you get value out of it just like I did, because I can honestly say that some of these things actually pointed me and steered me in a direction I didn't expect. One of the key principles, starting right at the top, he says, failure is important. I couldn't agree more. Here's a quote. He says, as a company grows, everything needs to scale, including the size of your failed experiments. If the size of your failures is not growing, then you're not going to be inventing at a size that can actually move the needle. I couldn't possibly disagree with that. I think it's an amazing statement. I think it's 100% true. In fact, he went on further and talked a little more about the Fire Phone. Now, I don't know about any of you, but guilty as charged, I owned one of the Fire Phones. And what I can tell you is I actually love my Fire Phone. I thought it was cool. I like the way it integrated with Amazon. I wish it would have taken things further. But he admitted that the Fire Phone was a failure for Amazon. He says, but the learnings that they took away from the Fire Phone helped them position themselves to build things like Echo and Alexa. So with that being said, I think that overall, I would argue that the Fire Phone was a success and that understanding how failure works is also a success. Now, this next one was really, really interesting to me. He pointed out that work and life should not be a balancing game. Now, people say they often ask him, or he says he often gets asked rather, about work-life balance. He says, my view is that's a debilitating phrase because it implies that there's a strict trade-off. Ooh, interesting. So he says people should look at work and life as integrated instead of two separate entities. It's actually a circle, not a balance. Now, I get where he's going with this, but Jeff, as much as I love you, I have to respectfully disagree. I think that sometimes you do have to disconnect and you do have to focus on family and focus on priorities. And I think that if you don't have a proper balance in these areas and you're trying to do everything, that you're going to give each one less of your capability, less of your time, talent, and energy. So for me, I feel like there's a better option. And I'm a big fan of work-life balance. And I think that when I say balance, it doesn't mean it has to be 50-50. It's not like a seesaw. But what I'm saying is you should be able to disconnect when you're not at work, and you should be able to fully engage when you are at work. So I think that the term work-life balance actually makes more sense to me than it does to Jeff. Just throwing it out there. Okay, next one. Focus your business on what won't change long-term. Now, this one's interesting. So let me give you his explanation, then I'll give you my thoughts. He said, when you have something that you know is true, even over the long term, you can afford to put a lot of energy into it. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that the second question is actually more important of the two, because you can build a business strategy around the things that are stable in time. Okay. So for Amazon, the example I used was investing energy into quick delivery times and low prices. If it were that simple for all of us, Jeff, we'd all be multi-billionaires. I think the truth is, this is the reason why Amazon for years struggled with implementing Agile. Everything's going to change in the next 10 years. And he realizes that, but also he said, what's not going to change? And I think that sometimes if you're looking at things as, okay, this is not going to change, and you're focusing on what's not going to change, it helps you set a long-term foundation for what you're trying to do, but it should never be a long-term goal. You should never put one over the other. And I guess for me, I say there's only two things solid about a plan, that it's a plan and it's going to change. So for me, I think in most companies, especially those companies in growth mode, change is inevitable. So trying to say that nothing's going to change and we should focus on the things that won't change is sort of a difficult pill to swallow for a company that might be brand new. So I'm just throwing it out there. If you're in a growth company or a startup company, you're probably going to be so focused on change that you don't have time to even look at things that won't change. Okay. Next one is my favorite one out of the whole list right here. It says business ideas should have some element of risk. Yes, yes, yes. If you have a business idea with no risk, it's probably already being done. He's right. You've got to have something that might not work. It will be in many ways an experiment. Experiments may fail, but the big failures are important to lead to big successes. And I think sometimes people are afraid to take a chance. They're afraid to make an investment. They're afraid to reach out a little bit. And what I can tell you is the most powerful things that I've ever learned were from times where I did experiment and I did reach out and I did try to do things differently. And those are the times when I learn the most. And those are the times when I generate the most success. Next one says delight your customers. I love this one. The most important thing is to be customer obsessed, he said. Don't satisfy them, absolutely delight them. I agree. And he's also said some things that scare me to death, right? Some of the things they said that scared me was when he thanked everyone who worked for Amazon for sending him into space. That's kind of harsh. And I don't know that he was that in touch with reality. So for me, when he says delight your customers, I think that he's thinking fast and cheap, which is great. But is fast and cheap always delightful? That's the question, right? Sometimes you're there to enjoy the ride. So I think delighting your customers and understanding how to delight your customers may be two separate topics, but I think Mr. Bezos is trying to get us online with delighting the end user. And I think that's a good idea. Okay, next he says, similarly, fear your customers instead of your competition. He says, be afraid of your customers because those are the folks who have the money. That makes sense. Our competitors are never going to send us money. Well, that makes sense. So what he's trying to say here is don't fear your competitors, fear your customers. And the customers can stop buying. The customers can stop moving. The customers can stop doing things. And that would be completely detrimental, right? So for him, he says, how's that saying go? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? I think what he's trying to say is we need to be in tune with our customers. And I couldn't agree more with that, whether it's through Moscow or through the use of assessment from business analysts. I think that there's lots of opportunity here for us to really hone in and learn what our customers want to make sure that we're obsessed with our customers' needs. And I think that if we do these things and if we follow this format, that in the end, it's going to give us the opportunity to lead with things that are going to really make a world of difference. So I hope that these were useful for you. We have some others, but I'm going to save those for a separate podcast episode. As always, we encourage you, if you have a topic you want to discuss, don't be afraid. Reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, we say, stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.